In the previous lecture, we looked at Thomas Kuhn's idea about the historical development of science. Just to remind ourselves, Kuhn distinguishes four phases. There is first the pre-paradigmatic phase, second, normal science, third, crisis, and fourth, scientific revolution. We focused on normal science in the previous lecture, and we learned that according to Kuhn, normal science is defined by the existence of a paradigm. A paradigm consists of all the theories, concepts, methods, and so on that a scientific discipline takes for granted. During normal science, which is basically science as we all know and learn it, scientists trust this paradigm, and the main scientific activity can be seen as solving scientific puzzles within the rules of the paradigm. During this phase, scientists are not critical about the paradigm itself. They simply take it for granted. So what about the other phases? Let's start with the first phase, the pre-paradigmatic phase. As the name indicates, this is the phase before there is a paradigm. Every scientific discipline starts out without any shared concepts, theories, and methods. Those still have to be thought up and developed by the scientists. The first historians didn't agree about the right way to write history. The first physicists didn't know what the right concepts were to talk about nature. The first linguists didn't have any generally accepted linguistic theories, and so on. Since there is no set of shared concepts, theories, and methods, individual scientists in the pre-paradigmatic phase will generally do very different things. They have different background assumptions, do different kinds of measurement, have very different ideas about which problems are worth investigating, and so on. It's also very hard of them to communicate, because they don't have a shared technical vocabulary. They never really know whether they're all talking about the same thing. In such circumstances, it is almost impossible for scientists to work together. Rather, everyone is pursuing their own ideas, and when scientists do interact, it is mostly to argue that their own concepts, theories, and methods are superior to those of other people, and that other people's results are therefore worthless. So pre-paradigmatic science doesn't really look like science as we know it, as unified, or at least somewhat unified disciplines with clear standards and a shared body of assumptions. According to Kuhn, this phase of science isn't very productive. Because scientists can't work together, they can't build on each other's results, which means that everyone is constantly starting from scratch. So it is very good for a scientific discipline, Kuhn thinks, when for one reason or another, maybe because of some great results or because of dirty politics or whatever, one set of theories and methods becomes dominant. Once that happens, once scientists in a pre-paradigmatic discipline fall in line behind a single set of ideas, that's when we have a paradigm. And then we move from pre-paradigmatic science to normal science. Scientists start working within a paradigm that they are no longer critical about, and that means they can finally work together to solve detailed problems. But paradigms don't last forever, which means that a discipline doesn't always remain in a state of normal science. Here Kuhn introduces the concept of an anomaly, a problem within the paradigm that scientists are at present unable to solve. An observation that doesn't fit with the basic theories of the paradigm, for instance, would be an anomaly. Now Popper would think of an anomaly as a falsification. It shows that the theories are wrong. And for Popper that means we have to reject the theories and thus reject the paradigm. But Kuhn thinks about anomalies in a very different way. He claims that every scientific discipline always has anomalies. There are always things that scientists at present don't know how to explain. But that doesn't worry them. They assume that they'll solve them in the future. The existence of anomalies is not a problem for a scientific paradigm, says Kuhn, as long as scientists remain confident that they will be resolved in due time. but it is possible for scientists to lose that confidence. If the number of anomalies keeps growing, and if scientists have almost no success when they try to solve the existing anomalies, then, Kuhn says, scientists will start to doubt whether they can ever solve these anomalies within the current paradigm. When that happens, we have reached the phase of crisis. So a crisis is a phase when scientists start doubting their own paradigm. In normal science, scientists have confidence that the paradigm will allow them to solve all the puzzles they want to solve. In a time of crisis, scientists are losing that confidence. This means that in times of crisis, scientists become critical of the paradigm. They start wondering whether it shouldn't be changed. They become interested in radical new ideas, new theories, new methods, new concepts. They start to think out of the box, so to say, outside the paradigm that they have been using for all these years. And the longer a crisis lasts, the more critical scientists become and the more radical are the new ideas that they take seriously. Now, there are two ways to end a crisis. One possibility is that some of the most important anomalies are solved within the current paradigm. Then the confidence of scientists in their paradigm will be restored and we go back to normal science. The crisis is over. The second possibility is the more dramatic. It is that a new paradigm emerges, a new set of theories, concepts and methods that promises to solve some of the most important anomalies. If the majority of the scientific community embraces this new paradigm and abandons the old paradigm, then we have reached the fourth phase of science, a scientific revolution. A scientific revolution, then, is that phase of science where one paradigm is abandoned and another is accepted. Kuhn also calls this a paradigm shift. Such revolutions are the most dramatic episodes in the history of science. One way of thinking is abandoned and an entirely different way of thinking is accepted. Some examples, which I won't go into in any detail, might be the famous scientific revolution with capital letters of the 17th century, but also the Renaissance revolution in philology, the Darwinian revolution in biology, or the Chomskyan or Saussurean revolutions in linguistics. These are moments which define scientific disciplines for decades or even for centuries. When we look back at the history of science, Kuhn points out, these scientific revolutions are the most noticeable moments. Because of that, people often think that science consists of revolutions and that it is a very critical activity. But in fact, Kuhn says, revolutions are the exception, not the rule. The rule is normal science. The vast majority of scientists do the vast majority of their work within a stable paradigm. They are solving puzzles without being too critical about the paradigm that they are working in. When normal science gets stuck, that's when a revolution can shake things up again. But most of the real work, most of the detailed solving of problems is done by normal scientists during normal science. Kuhn's picture of science then is quite different from the view of science that many people have. It has been immensely influential. The idea of a paradigm is very useful for understanding science, as is the interplay between normal science and revolutions that Kuhn identifies. Things become a bit more controversial when Kuhn starts talking about scientific progress and what he calls incommensurability. But that is the topic for the next lecture.